Well, we call it the knife shop for a reason. As you can see, a lot of cases, we have a lot of different knives. And one of the questions that comes up quite often is, what role does handle material play when it comes to choosing a knife? And so I decided to put together a quick video on that, and we'll go into that because handle material is actually very important depending on what you're going to do with the knife. So stick around for a few and we're going to go into handle materials. As I said earlier, this video is on knife handle materials and the role they play in choosing a knife. And that's actually a very important role that, unless you've used a knife quite a bit in your life, you may not easily put it together until you have the experience to do so. And the reason why it's so important, if it's a knife, like a bushcraft knife, a knife that's going to be spending a lot of time whittling feather sticks or carving trap triggers, carving, gigs and spears or whatever. It's for crafting things in the bush or in the woods, as we call them here in America. And you want a smooth handle because anything highly textured is going to cause hot spots when you're using the knife and rocking it back and forth in your hand over and over again, changing positions on it. And so you want one nice and smooth. And this is a Castrum Lars Fault knife and it has really nice curly birch handle scales and very, very smooth, excellent for a bushcraft knife. Now, the more intense the situation, the more deteriorated the circumstances, then the more the need for a heavily textured or heavily featured handle. And there's different ways to approach that. SOG with their Seal Pup, if you can see this, has finger grooves as well as texture, and I'll do a close-up of it in a few minutes. But to give you a really good secure purchase, and it has the serrations for cutting through rope or cutting through plastic, cutting through rubber, whatever. It's a small urbanized combat knife technically that was designed with the Navy SEALs in mind, but it makes a good urban survival knife. It's has a fairly thin blade, so it doesn't encounter so much resistance as some of the thicker blades will. It has the tie-dye coating, makes it smooth. The serrations, like I said, for cutting rope, cutting whatever, and then it does have finger grooves and then a pretty heavily swelled pommel and a pretty heavily swelled guard. So you really get a nice purchase on the knife. So I'll set up the camera and reconfigure it and then go into more detail, more close-ups on some of these knives so you can see what I'm talking about. The oldest handle materials for knives are the more organic ones. Wood was obviously one of the first ones. Leather was another one. Bone antler handles were used a lot. And then as we got more advanced with materials, phenolics like what Buck uses, it's pretty sure it's the same handle material that they make bowling balls out of. And this one is smooth for lots of use, but it gets tacky when it gets wet. So it's a good knife for a field knife for a sportsman because it gets grippier as it gets wet, especially if your hands are sweating. And then, there's linen micarta and canvas micarta that makes a really nice, durable handle material. That was the problem with things like wood and bone, was it just wasn't that durable. It was fragile, temperature sensitive, environmentally sensitive, and that was some of the same problems with the leather, which was what inspired using handle materials like the phenolic, and like I think it was General Electric that created micarta out of canvas but then a lot of other people have developed different types of it and use it different ways. Linen micarta is one of my favorites. It's smooth, it's durable. You drop it, it doesn't damage it. It doesn't. I mean, it may dent, but it won't break because of all. It's like a plywood made out of cloth, or it's just layers of linen sandwiched in a vat of epoxy and put under pressure, and then when it dries in sheets, and it's just a very durable, moisture resistant, weather resistant type of handle material, great for the outdoors. And then in time they came up with grippier things like Kraton, which this is the Cold Steel SRK Compact, which is the Cold Steel SRK series, is one of my favorite series of knives. They're just really nice handles, really durable. They're not the greatest for long-term whittling and carving with, because until your hands get used to it, because they grip your hand, which is the whole point for a survival knife. And then here's a close-up of the Seal Pup, and you can see the texture in the handle as well as the finger grooves, and then you can see more about the blade there, how it's designed to be more of a survival knife. And then there are knives that come with no handle at all, and you skeletonize knives, and then you can use a cord wrap, and that's one simple alternative. It keeps it from being cold in your hand. It keeps it from being hard against your hand. It gives you something that fills your hand up a little more and gives you texture to grip on. So that's another option. But the point is that handle material is a major consideration for the knife you're going to use most often, or the knives you're going to use most often, because the handle material should be chosen based on the application you're going to use the knife for. I mean, are you going to spend a lot of time with it in your hand, whittling and carving? Or is it going to be on your boat where you're cutting up bait and stuff? And, you know, that's having a good purchase is good for that. Or, you know, are you going to be out in the weather a lot with it, but need something that's durable but thin, doesn't take up a lot of space? So there are a lot of different considerations, and these are just some of them. I mean, there's also G10 and bone handle materials. Bone is another one that's fragile. It's temperature sensitive. It doesn't handle sudden changes in temperature very well. When it goes from being very cold to being very warm, it can suddenly pop and crack off of the knife. So bear that in mind. Thanks for stopping in for this video. Hopefully this helps explain why, when people ask me what my favorite handle material is, the first answer is it depends on what I'm doing with the knife. Aesthetically and for long-term use of the knife, curly birch has become one of my favorites. I love the way it looks, and I love the way it feels, and using it in long-term uses when cutting on feather sticks or just fashioning spears or whatever out of bamboo or river cane or whatever I'm working with out in the woods. I like the way it feels in long term. Conversely, if it's a knife that I'm going to be using in deteriorated circumstances, it's going to be probably Kraton or the glass-filled nylon like the SOG. I like both of these. They're good. The Kraton is a little bit softer, has more give. The glass-filled nylon's a little more solid, so if you're going to be using it in a defensive role and striking with the pommel, the glass-filled nylon is going to be a better choice. But as far as the knives that I choose to leave in kits for grab-and-go kits, they tend to be synthetic handles. This is the big brother to the SRK Compact. This is the full-size SRK in BG10 San Mai, because I like stainless knives with synthetic handles to leave in my kits so that they're more environmentally sound. When I'm out walking in Gallenberg or wherever the kiddo and I go for vacation, the Benchmade Adamas. It's thin, it's skeletonized, it's light, it's tough, and it doesn't take up a lot of space or weigh a lot, but it brings a lot to the table if, you know, things do deteriorate. That's one of the lessons I've had in life, is things can deteriorate very quickly and unexpectedly. And then, you know, if I'm teaching urban survival classes and spend a lot of time in an urban environment, you know, I've always got the SE3 with me, because I've just never found another knife this small, this thin, this light that can take this much abuse, which is exactly what a good survival knife should do. It's highly portable, it's easy to make it more discreet and carry it on different parts of the body. And if you've ever seen me demonstrate the SEs there at the shop, my SE3, and watched me pry the cabinets apart demonstrating Sean Rowan's heat treat, you know why I take an SE3 with me pretty much everywhere I go. It's always nearby, whether I'm carrying it or not, just in case things go that direction. So thank you for stopping in. Hopefully it gives you food for thought, and, you know, it gives you some idea of why there are so many different handle materials and what each of them lends themselves to. Stop in next time. I think the video that I'm working on next, I'm working on two simultaneously. One on the ReadyWise foods that we just got in at the outpost, and then I'm working on another one on Ferrocerium and the different things that it can work on as a fire starter, and what an awesome piece of kit it is to have handy. So stop in and we'll see what I'm getting into then. Until then, you guys be safe and be blessed, and keep on keeping on.